Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Mark Poland. I am the Global Solution Architect for Veeam's Pure Storage Alliance, and we're here to talk about driving all-flash availability, Pure and Veeam Storage Snapshot integration and orchestration. I am joined by my esteemed colleague, Chris Sprague. Chris, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Chris Sprague, as he said, hi, everyone. I work for Pure Storage as a modern data protection specialist focused on our native data protection and working with our awesome partner Veeam and all the great integrations we have. So happy to be here today.
All right, thanks, Chris. Some housekeeping before we get too far into the webinar. If you have questions, and I hope you do, please go ahead and type those into the question session of your webinar controls. And with that, I think we're ready to get into a quick review of the content. So we're going to start out talking about the changing IT landscape, and everything, of course, will be how Veeam and Pure can help. We're going to talk about the disaster that you are most likely to face, which is ransomware, how Veeam and Pure can help you with that. And then we'll mention some things in that first half that we're going to go in and dig into a bit and talk about the deep storage integration that we have with our two product sets. And then what I'm calling from better to best is really a sneak peek at what capabilities are being added to, again, both products moving forward with Veeam's version 12 release. So with that, let's jump right in, talk about how the cloud has changed the IT landscape. And, really, to me, as we look at this, really, again, from that kind of ransomware security perspective, which is so critical today, clearly the increase in ransomware activity is just, it's a meteoric rise. It's mind-boggling to see 700+% increase in ransomware activity. Veeam recently released a data protection survey for not just Veeam customers, but across a broad segment of customers, and that really fleshes that out. But the other portion of this message is customers aren't just keeping their data in their data center where you could argue they have their best security. They're moving aggressively to the cloud for platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, software as a service. So, you could argue that potentially increasing the risk profile, certainly the attack vectors. So it's even more critical to have a data protection and storage strategy that is going to put you in a situation where you're not even considering paying the criminals the ransom that they're asking. So the other thing that's compounding this is the reality of legacy products. And if we look at these numbers, now these are not Veeam customers, they're not Pure customers. These are customers that are running the legacy backup products with legacy storage. And a lot of numbers, but the one that really draws my eye is 58% have failures in their recovery. And what we're gonna, when we talk more about ransomware recovery is the really important part of the conversation. And if you can't recover when ransomware isn't in the picture, then it's gonna, just compound things when it is in the picture. Anything you want to add there, Chris?
Yeah, these numbers on the last couple slides are pretty eye-opening, and that 58% failure rate was first thing I really was drawn to too. That means 42% are successful or don't have a failure. And then what percent of this, of that 42% in legacy backup is really getting you back up and running in the time you need, right? So they may be successful, but is it still bringing you back from ransomware or in an outage, meeting your SLAs?
Yeah, really good point. So let's keep going. And I've been in data protection exclusively for 15 years. I've been doing data center stuff for a lot longer than that. And when we talked about disaster recovery, which has been, part of the conversation in my world for, a couple of decades, historically it was the disaster that everybody planned for was the, destruction or disablement of a data center. And that I can say in over 20 years of being in this industry, I've only seen that happen one time to a customer where data center was destroyed. That was on 9/11, right? The disaster that every customer is facing today is ransomware. And if we look at the numbers, right, again, just like those other slides, certain numbers pop out. To me, it's not just the cost of the ransom, it's 10x or more to remediate the environment so that you end up in a better place than you were. Then, the number of companies that have gotten hit by ransomware, it's the vast majority, over 76%. Some of those companies, right, in the teens, have gotten hit 5 or 6 times in the last 12 months. So it just, again, astronomical numbers, and really, frightening news, frightening statistics. Chris?
Yeah. I mean, the two bottom numbers here jump out to me a lot, right? 76% one or more ransomware attacks. Like you said, we used to always plan. I spent a number of years in IT myself, in networking and infrastructure, architect. And we used to plan, build DR sites and plan for that huge disaster that probably wasn't going to happen, especially in Boise, Idaho, right? Like earthquakes or hurricanes or something along those lines. But ransomware is very real, right? And everyone is susceptible and getting attacked. And then the number next to it, 55%. So barely half of companies that are attacked are able to recover greater than 60% of their data, right? That's pretty alarming to me. We've seen some big attacks out there, right, where you even pay the ransom and still are using backup products and tools that they've used to get the data back, right? Because even if you pay for it, doesn't mean you're going to get that data back. That's not what ransomware, quote unquote, companies are in business for, right? Getting your data back. They just want to take it and get some money. So
no, I can't imagine that the ransomware developers spend a lot of time in QA on the recovery side, at least, right?
Yeah.
So, one of the things about ransomware, again, it's such a very different disaster than the destruction or disablement of a data center. Those things you can really protect against because they're physical, they're technological. When you look at ransomware, if I can get this slide to build correctly for me, there we go. The reason why it is such a huge threat to organizations is it's not just technology, right? The technology part you can lock down, but when you've got people involved, when you've got processes involved, you're gonna have you're gonna have people make mistakes. You're gonna have people that don't follow the processes, and whether it's somebody clicks on the phishing email right? That's still, email is still the primary attack vector. But you can see here, there's lots of other stuff here that that could, make your weaken your defenses, I guess is really what I want to say.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I have a number or slide to back this up, but I would assume social engineering is still very high on the list of, ransomware attacks, right?
Absolutely. That getting, whether it's a malicious insider or whether it's a just somebody who, accidentally provides insider access.
Yep.
All right. So, the thing about ransomware, doom and gloom, has been for a long time. I want to go on record with my esteemed colleague Chris here and tell you the good news about ransomware. And it's kind of like, it's like everything else in our lives. It requires work, but the payoff is really big. It's kind of like exercise in that regard, I guess. The good news is you got to do some work, but if you do the work and you prepare and validate your ransomware recovery plan, and we're going to talk about the elements of that, you can reliably recover, and with good performance, as we will talk about as well, with a minimum disruption to your operations, right? And we've got, if you go to Pure's website, if you go to Veeam's website, there are success stories where, companies that talk about that they were attacked and they were able to very quickly recover, leveraging Pure and Veeam. So the ransomware recovery plan, what's up with that? What do I need to do? And there's really two critical elements. The first one is you need clean, usable backups, right? They have to be safe from the attack. And we're going to talk more about both of these things. And then, now that I've got clean backups that I can use to recover, I need to be able to recover really fast, because we could be talking tens to hundreds of terabytes worth of data, depending how extensive the encryption event is. So I could need to get back not a directory or a database, but all my directories and all my databases. Anything to mention there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're really the two top points here, right? Valid, usable backup copies. We've been so concerned for, decades in backup and shrinking backup times, meeting our backup windows, making sure we could get data backed up, right? And we all see the green check mark that says, yep, backup's good. But really, we do a backup in case we need to restore, right? So how do we ensure those are valid, usable copies? And we'll talk about that. We have some great ways to do that.
And you know what? That's a great introduction to where we're going next. So what I'd like to do next is let's talk about what Veeam can do. Then let's talk about what Pure can do. And then let's put the two together and talk about how Veeam and Pure, it's kind of a corny expression, but it's appropriate, how Veeam and Pure are better together. So what this is a big focus for Veeam as it is for Pure. So what is it that Veeam offers to provide, call it secure backup, if you will? First, the thing to mention here is this is your last line of defense, because you've got all your security products, creating layers of walls, right? Somebody's gotten through all of those and they've gotten to your most critical asset, your data, and now you need to get it back. So, you can see on the left here, we've got the products, Veeam Backup and Replication, and the associated cloud native products, Veeam Backup for AWS, Azure, GCP. Veeam One is our monitoring, alerting, and alarming product. Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator allows you to orchestrate very sophisticated recoveries, not just a machine or an application, but the entire data center is how that scopes out. And then, Kasten K10 by Veeam is what Veeam offers for containerized applications, Kubernetes and that. So to talk about, and this, what we're going to talk about on the ransomware protection holds true with all that product stack, right? The first is trusted immutability, right? So you have to make sure that your backups can't be changed, deleted, encrypted, anything like that, right? It is exactly the way it was when you backed it up. But Chris brings up a really important point, right? It's not just, did I get a successful backup and I've got a green check mark? That's good, but what's critical here for what we call secure backup again is to be able to say, I ran a recovery test and it succeeded. So we have this job type called Sure Backup. We also have it for our replication called Sure Replica, where it will actually boot the machine, physical or virtual in this case, boot that in an isolated sandbox. Think of it as a quarantine environment. It will make sure that the machine is running, the operating system is running, and even the application is running. So it can verify that if you had to do a recovery of that, it would be successful. And a lot of customers in compliance-centric industries like healthcare and financial use these Sure Backup reports to satisfy that auditing requirement. Okay, the auditor says, did you back it up? Yeah, here's the report. Did you recover it? Here's the report. Move on to the next item. The last piece on the backup side is not a Veeam thing. It is just good backup hygiene. And it used to be the 3-2-1 rule. Now it is the 3-2, easy for me to say, 3-2-1-1-0 rule. So what that means is the 3 is 3 copies of your data, production and 2 backup. The 2 is 2 different media types. That could be, block storage. It could be object storage. Could even still be tape. The first one is 1 offsite copy, so I'm protected against site issues. The second one is at least one immutable copy. So I know I've got that clean backup no matter what. And then the 0 is 0 errors when I run that backup verification. And then on the recovery side of things, Veeam can recover, instant recovery. We pioneered this back in version 5. What was that? That was almost 10 years ago. And over the years, we have enhanced this capability. Just earlier this year, I was on a demo with someone from Pure where they did 50 parallel instant VM recoveries in a matter of minutes. So that's what we mean by at scale. So this was in a demo lab. You can imagine production, you could do a lot more. Secure Restore is the other side of the coin of backup verification. It leverages that same type of functionality where I can boot something in a quarantine sandbox environment, and I can even rescan it with today's malware definitions, so I can pick up on something that might have been a 0-day exploit. And then finally, that disaster recovery orchestration, if you need something more sophisticated than just a machine or an application, you can, with Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator, you can do entire data centers, fail them over, following exactly the the process you need to follow. So that was a lot, but that's what Veeam has. So Chris, can you walk us through what Pure has?
Yeah, let's talk about what we do on the Pure Storage side for ransomware protection. And really, as you can see here, it's a feature we call safe mode. Safe mode, Purity safe mode snapshots. You can see right here, fast data recovery with immutable snapshots that can't be eradicated. So what does that mean? Right? Mark's always good to point out that, hey, eradicated is a term we may not all understand. And so I like to take this opportunity to say, yeah, so first of all, with Pure Storage, eradication basically means permanently deleted, right? Permanent deletion. So we have a two-stage process with Pure where an item gets destroyed, say a snapshot is destroyed, and then eradicated, right? So it's a two-step process. That's where that term eradicated, but it means it prevents permanent loss of data, right? Due to either admin mistakes or malicious attack, insider attack. So we really like to refer to this as our administrative air gap, because even if you are the root admin with all privileges, safe mode will still protect those underlying objects or snapshots in this case from permanent deletion, like I said. So we can actually secure those snapshots up to 400 days on our FlashBlade product, up to 30 days on FlashArray. So you get to set that when you set up safe mode. Of course, we get quick data restores with all flash. The reason that this works so well as a ransomware protection and in conjunction with Veeam is we're not setting up something different. We're not re-architecting the array to do safe mode. Safe mode is we're not changing snapshots. It is the snapshots you know and love from Pure and use all day, just protected with another layer we call safe mode. And of course, we can do the replication, whether that replication is from Veeam on the back end or on the front end, of course, in production. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Or if you're doing native just flash array replication, you can be ensured that both sides or wherever that data is replicated, you can enable safe mode on all of those arrays and be protected.
All right, and you guys had a recent release where you can get granular with your safe mode. It's not array wide anymore.
Yeah, great point, Mark. Thank you. Yes, so safe mode still today and in the past was array wide, right? So you turned on safe mode, it was array wide. You're still able to do that today, so all the objects are protected when you turn that on. From our release, basically Purity 6.3 and going forward, we have brought per P group or granular safe mode. So you can turn that on now per protection group. So if there are you want a set of volumes within the array protected in a protection group that you set up, maybe with their own replication, retention period and all that, that can be protected itself, right? So we could actually now kind of pick pieces within the array to protect with safe mode rather than just a full array wide, one shot. Thanks for that, Mark.
So my testing, I don't have to protect, but production, development, the things that are effectively my intellectual property, I can make sure those are protected.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that before, right? Production, obviously, even some development areas or things we're working on. But if we're doing testing or lab work, right, we just want to be able to spin that up, spin it down. We don't necessarily need to protect that with safe mode, right?
All right, well, thank you. So we talked about what Veeam can do. We talked about what Pure can do. Let's put those together. And, one of my favorite, I'm going to call it a snack, is peanut butter cups, right? Chocolate and peanut butter. To me, that's how I see Veeam and Pure. So when we look at putting these, both of these together, we've got capabilities pre-attack or pre-breach, then, even during or after the breach, we'll walk through those on the Veeam side. Our Veeam 1 monitoring, alerting, alarming product. It has alerts that look for suspicious behavior, not just on the backup data, which we have, right? If the size of a backup changes dramatically from one day to the next, that could be indicative of an attack, right? If everything got encrypted and we ran a backup, it would look like all new data, and therefore the incremental size would grow to the size of effectively a full backup. So that would be one thing, but Veeam actually can see into production workloads and see if, an encryption event is going on, right? CPU, IO to the disk, to the network, things like that. And then also, that sure backup recovery test to validate when you run sure backup. And I mentioned this earlier when I talked about secure restore. I want to let you know this would also play with sure backup, that I'm running sure backup with today's malware definition, and I can actually that malware scan, I can turn that on as part of my sure backup job, just as I can as part of my secure restore job. Now, we talk about this as all Veeam, but Chris, there's some pure stuff in here before the breach, right?
Yeah, just kind of another interesting synergy between the companies, right? Your monitoring tool is called Veeam One, and ours is called Pure One. So, of course, yeah, it's ours is all web-based. See all the activity on your arrays. You can set up alarms like that. So yeah, that is where I like to say we've got these kind of in columns here, but really we do some overlap, right, with that. In the features pre-breach and during breach, post-breach, of course.
Yeah, you want to walk us through, the pure stuff?
Yeah, let's just move into that. So yeah, like you said, we've got Pure One monitoring as well that'll help pre-breach. We're moving into like during the breach, flash array safe mode that I just talked about. We get the immutable primary storage snapshots. We actually like to say that our snapshots are immutable regardless, right? You can't actually change the snapshots. But then we put safe mode on top to make them resilient as well, because now you cannot delete those, right? We can even, so that could absolutely be production, and what we'll focus on mostly here is production and storage integration. But as you can see, that second bullet point also protects Veeam backups, right? So we can be doing Veeam backups to a flash array or to any of the Pure products and protect those backups with safe mode as well, right? And that's really cool because this is another piece where there's some Veeam stuff here we didn't really put on here. Mark mentioned Veeam immutability. So you can utilize Veeam's immutability on a repository and enable flash array safe mode, right? And kind of get that double whammy, right? Defense in depth and really secure at the file-based level and then at the array level as well.
I like that expression. I've heard you use that a couple of times. Defense in depth, right? So it's not just one wall that you're putting up, it's multiple walls, right? So,
Yep.
I know some folks on the Veeam strategy team, they like to call that the immutability double play. Whatever, however you like to think about it, but you can also think of it as a belt and suspenders approach as well. So
yeah, well, I like what you mentioned earlier. This is really your last line of defense. You hope from these attacks you don't necessarily have to go all the way to backups or safe mode protected snapshots, right? So hopefully you have defense in depth in place in other places, right? Antivirus and intrusion detection systems and all that stuff beforehand. But then of course we want to put in layers here as the last line of defense as well.
all right, yeah, good stuff. The last piece here is, working together, right, on fast restore. So clearly, if I can do instant recovery capabilities, I can get things back up and running quickly. I want to be able to scan those things with today's definitions, malware definitions, to make sure if I am recovering, I'm recovering back to a clean room environment. Last thing you want to do is reinfect that clean room, and then having the flash-based backup storage. So again, back in the day, we used to talk about backup speeds. I actually you know, I don't even remember the last time I talked about backup speed. It's all about recovery speed these days.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, we used to a lot, and there's still some very, very large environments, right, where you need to hit a backup window. But for the most part, that has turned to what does that restore look like? What's my recovery time going to be? Because that's really what I'm worried about to keep my business running.
Yeah. So at this point, what I want to do is, you know, pivot a little bit because we talked about, you know, backup performance, restore performance, and, you know, let's put it in the context of the products, right? So let me show a 30,000 foot view of a Pure and Veeam environment where you've got, you know, and I tend to think in a bit of a black and white manner here. It is not, but let's present it that way. Then we can potentially talk about some exceptions. But on the left side, you've got your production environment, and in this example, we're looking at virtual machines. It could be other workloads, physical, could be file, could be, you know, other stuff. But, you know, just to keep it simple, we've got, you know, FlashArray/X and the more recent, bigger, faster FlashArray/XL for the, you know, for your production data stores. We're going to talk about the integration that we worked on together, and we're going to talk about what we've been working on since then. And we're also going to touch on a bit, not so much, but, you know, just keep in the picture what we're talking about for backup storage here. So the FlashArray//C, a capacity optimized version of the FlashArray, perfect for backup. The FlashBlade//S, which, you know, because it's scale out and it can meet the mark for a number of different workloads. If you go with the capacity optimized stuff, also can fit the bill if you're looking for a file and object type of storage platform. And Veeam here in the middle, you know, very much that glue that glues these together, again, in this context. So let's walk through what that storage snapshot integration is and how we went about this. Now, this goes back years, actually, is Veeam created what we call the Universal Storage API. And then what Pure did was they developed a piece of software they call a plugin that works with that API. Veeam worked with them through that development process. We worked with them very heavily through the testing and certification process. And the Pure Storage plugin is one of the leading storage plugins as far as download metrics go, which is the only way we have to measure these things, from the Veeam website. So very, very popular with our combined customers. I got to imagine almost all, if not all of our combined customers are leveraging this because it's so powerful. Now, I've been talking about the power. Let me dig in, talk about what that means, right? So one of the things, if you know, I'll take it from a customer challenge point of view first, then we'll dig and talk more about it. But if we look at backup historically, it's a pretty heavyweight process to run backup, and it can negatively impact the production workload, right? The production SQL Server or Oracle or whatever that production workload is. So backup from storage snapshot is a key capability. But if you look at other products in the market, and I don't want to say anything bad about my competitors, you know, good people and all that, but I do want to compare and contrast that a number of our Veeam's competitors, when they talk about storage snapshot integration, their story ends with backup from storage snapshot. With Veeam, we keep going. And the second capability, or challenge, I should say, is most backups, again, because they tend to be heavyweight, even when you factor in backing up from storage snapshot, you're probably not going to run a backup every hour. But customers want to have recovery points that are frequent, and certainly during business days. So having Veeam be able to orchestrate snapshots, and we'll explain what we mean by that, is critical to give you a better recovery point objective. That means less data loss at the end of the day. The third capability is being able to recover from the snapshots and do it right. If you think, I know we've been talking about ransomware, and it is a big risk, but even in this era of ransomware, the majority of recoveries you need to do throughout the day are end user initiated, right? I've been working on a spreadsheet all day and I deleted it accidentally. I overwrote it, did something foolish accidentally. I want to bring it back. So being able to do granular recovery from those. And then finally, what if I wanted, take those and be able to do something that I honestly, I haven't had the opportunity to do before, and that is have a completely representative production environment that isn't production without investing in a whole set of physical infrastructure to do that, right? So on-demand sandbox for storage snapshots. And again, we'll dig into each one of these. And let's start from the top with backup from storage snapshot. So as mentioned, customers want to be sure that when they run their backups that they don't impact production negatively. So instead of backing it up from the production volume, Veeam can, the part of the Veeam job, you turn the snapshot integration on. If that's configured, it will automatically create a VMware snapshot. In this example, we'll talk VMware. It'll create that VMware snapshot and actually quiesce the workloads. So we can do application consistent snapshots in VMware. Then it'll snapshot the volume that those machines live on. That's the storage snapshot. As soon as it's done that, it can get rid of that VMware snapshot. Now, all of that probably took just a few seconds. So not enough time to build up a change log to stun any kind of workload. And then once the snapshot's been created, the VM snapshot is gone, then Veeam can back up directly over iSCSI or Fiber Channel and send that data off to, in this example, either a FlashArray//C or a FlashBlade//S. Anything you want to add there, Chris?
No, I think you hit most of it, right? This is really taking the technology part of our integration to use a storage snapshot to do an actual backup. So you're sending those backups to, in this case, a FlashArray//C or FlashBlade that will give you, great restore times from backups. So
yes,
yeah, I think
yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think you covered most of it there, and I think the next slide takes us more into snapshot orchestration and how we can improve those RPOs with production snaps, right?
Yeah, great point, right? Because you see here, right? You can run backup more frequently than once a day. I think it's pretty routine that customers will back up once per day, but they want to be able to, in this example, during the business hours, they want to be able to have hourly restore points, right? For that RPO recovery point objective that you talked about. And you can do that with snapshots, right? Not going to interfere with the production workloads in the least. And it's also going to store the snapshot in this example, because we're talking about what we have today. It's going to store it on the production array. Again, for those majority of recovery cases where I want to recover something throughout the day, I've got that. The key point here that I want to make is this isn't bringing in the Pure Storage administrator and asking them to do some work. This is actually what we call a snapshot only job within Veeam. So the Veeam administrator is able to control this environment from a backup point of view and a recovery point of view, because it's exactly the same tools that they're familiar with. And what we're seeing here is I've got these Veeam Explorers, which if you're a Veeam customer or you familiar with Veeam, you probably heard about these. These are a key part of our value story. And you've forever been able to use these Explorers, whether it's a file or application explorer, with our backup storage, right? You can still do that. But now we're talking about leveraging those snapshots, in this case on the FlashArray//X, and being able to do that granular recovery, have it be application consistent, potentially, and make things a whole lot more productive for your storage administrators and your backup administrators.
Yeah, and that actually something I wanted to say here, and I just saw a question. Hopefully, this kind of answers it around storage space, using significant amounts of storage space. But this right here, this granular item recovery, is really what makes the last slide viable, right? Where Mark was talking about take a nightly backup, do it once a day because it is a little heavier lift, and then do snapshots every hour, right? The great thing about that, a Pure Storage snapshot, there is no overhead on the array. It happens instantly. You take a snapshot, you don't have to worry about performance overhead, and it's spaceless, right? It does not, we don't duplicate the data. It's a snapshot, a point in time of the data. So when you take it, there's no overhead on the array from a performance or a space standpoint. So to the question that was here, it's really just the changes, right? As you start changing data, that snapshot will hold on to the changes, and so it'll grow a little bit in size. But if I have a volume and I take a snapshot, I did not grow my array or take up any further storage, right? So that makes it really nice because I can do that, take snapshots without taking up a bunch more storage or overhead. But then this granular item recovery is really what makes it viable, because if I wanted to go, instead of last night's 24 hours ago backup, I can go to last hour's snapshot. And now with Veeam, I don't have to restore that entire snapshot, right, of all the volumes or the volume or the LUN that might be part of that snapshot. Veeam can actually crack it open and restore all these items as you see here, right? If I just need a single VM out of an actual pure snapshot, Veeam can restore that, right? If I need SQL databases or just SharePoint items, you can get very granular. So I think that's really what brings this whole story together.
Yeah, and there are two questions about licensing for Veeam, and let me address those. I've been with Veeam coming up on 5 years, so I've been here through some transition in licensing. We used to license at the VM host socket level. And when we did that, we had different editions, the standard, enterprise, enterprise plus editions. And with each edition, you got, moving up that stack, you got more and more functionality, but it also increased the cost of the licensing. So, for existing customers that have socket licensing, I would urge you to consider transitioning to a Veeam Universal license. If you are new to Veeam, you're going to start out with the Veeam Universal license. That's really good news from my perspective, because I found all that Enterprise Plus, Enterprise stuff confusing. Everything, every Veeam Universal license is Enterprise Plus level functionality. So you get everything included with that. And to answer the question, if you were still doing the old way of licensing, yes, the storage snapshot integration is part of Enterprise Plus. If you're currently using that, a great way to take advantage of this is look at transitioning to Veeam Universal Licensing. It'll probably drop your overall spend with Veeam by switching over to and the Veeam Universal License, I should mention, is available as a subscription and a perpetual license. So it isn't, if you have to use capital expense, you can do perpetual. If you want to do operating expense, you can do subscription. So urge you to take a look at that. So the last piece is of the storage snapshot integration is really just, everything that we've talked about. Now I can, with these snapshots, with the better recovery point objectives, I can do really cool stuff. And I shouldn't say cool, valuable stuff with these, because it's not something that's representative of a production environment. It's the production environment, right? Because if I'm doing, let's just say I want to test a patch, new application comes out, and SQL Server, for example, and I want to try out that SQL Server, the new version, before I put it into production. I can actually run that against, with these data labs for storage snapshots, and that will run right on the production flash array. So it's not production-like performance, it would actually be real production performance. And it's really, I sometimes say your imagination is the only limit here for what workload you can actually use these data labs on-demand sandboxes for. Really powerful stuff can be used for certainly any secondary use case, but potentially even more than that.
Yeah, this is one of those features that, I really like it as a customer and coworker and partner. It's always been a great feature to use. I've actually seen a lot of customers out there, really talk this feature up and then not necessarily have deployed it or utilize it, right? It's one of those things you go in and get it set up, and you can really start to gain a lot of benefits from it.
Yeah, and that setup is just one time.
Yep.
And then you can reuse those. You create the data lab structure. We call it a virtual lab under the covers. You create that, and then I can use that for multiple use cases. All right, so everything that we've talked about, Chris, is available today.
Yep.
So let's peek behind the curtain and look at what's coming in our next release. And that next release is version 12, and it will have the second version of the Universal Storage API. And I am really pleased to announce to you all that Pure has been working with Veeam every step of the way on this. Pure is our development partner for the Universal Storage API 2.0 version. They've helped us make this a better API, and we've worked with them to create some really great functionality for the next version of their storage snapshot. And that really valuable functionality I'm referring to is everything we talked about with the snapshots and the snapshot orchestration is in the context of that production array. Now we're talking about, okay, what if I can now orchestrate snapshots off that production array to someplace else? Secondary snapshot orchestration, we call that. What if I'm in a compliance-centric environment and I need to keep those snapshots around for months or years, just like I do my backup retention? We'll talk about archiving and offload. And then something that won't be in the initial plug-in release from Pure, but will be in a follow-on release, is the first point, the snapshot orchestration. We'll see that that leverages asynchronous storage snapshots, supporting synchronous storage snapshots, and keep me honest here, that is what you guys call pure active cluster. Is that correct?
Active cluster, that's correct. Yep.
All right, cool. So let's talk through that a little bit. So on the left, I've got my production environment, and maybe this is, I've got an active type of data center configuration with 2 data centers. I've got a flash array X at both. If I don't have that active, maybe I'm leveraging a backup site or a DR site. I could even use a flash array C on the right. But what Veeam is doing is we are asking Pure to do stuff on our behalf. We're not actually doing it. So we're saying to Pure, will you please create a storage snapshot? And then once you've created that snapshot, will you please asynchronously replicate that over to the second site? Now, what I find really important here is maybe I want to keep the amount of snapshots to a minimum on my production site. So I keep 1 day's worth of hourly snapshots on my production site, which, it's pretty common usage there. But then over at the remote site, I want to set a different retention scheme for the snapshots. I want to keep a week. I have that ability, again, through a Veeam snapshot only job, something very familiar to Veeam administrators, to be able to do that. And then the other thing to mention, I'm not just keeping the snapshots in case something bad happens. I can actually do all of this stuff so that I can run backups off of that secondary flash array. So if we said that, backup from storage snapshot reduced the impact of backup on the primary site, you could argue if I'm backing up from the storage from the secondary site, I am completely eliminating any impact of backup on the production environment. Anything to add there, Chris?
No, I think you hit the big things, right? The things it brings to us is, again, storage snapshot explorer for storage snapshot if I need to get it from that secondary site, or even doing, that backup completely at the secondary site. If you wanted to get backup out of production altogether, transfer the snapshot over and then backup over there. I think those are the really kind of cool features that stick out to me from this replication integration.
Yep. Last capability to cover is the snapshot archiving. So being able to have Veeam ask for a snapshot and then sending it in snapshot format off to either a S3 compatible, it could be FlashBlade, could potentially even be a flash array, where maybe I'm, again, compliance centric environments where I don't want to keep just a week of these things. I might want to keep months, if not years of these things. So, something that gives you that flexibility.
Yep.
So
again, this is just the native, we call it Cloud Snap, right, from Pure, and this is just going to let you do all of that through your, your orchestration layer. Basically, use Veeam as your interface to orchestrate all that.
Yeah, and then call to action for all you folks. If you don't have experience working with Veeam, it's really easy to get that experience. You can download a free trial at veeam.com. And you might say, well, what if I want to try a Pure flash array? Are you going to send me one? Virtually is the answer. So I've got this tinyurl.com Pure FA test drive. So if you want to sign up for a lab environment where you can try out a flash array, please do. I see we've got 2 minutes left. There's a couple of questions I want to touch on. One question that was asked is, a Veeam customer today who's using scale out backup repository, and they're asking if can they, do everything that we're talking about, right? Not the V12 stuff, but the stuff that is all in existence today. Can they do that with a scale out backup repository? And the answer is yes. You gotta love when it's a simple one word answer. Yes, you most certainly can. I think we got time for.
Yeah, Mark, did you see this one about kind of interesting? Do any of the competitors have something similar to data labs, and how does Veeam differentiate?
That's a great question. I'm going to pick on Dell here. Dell is a very big competitor of ours with Power Protect and Networker and Avamar and what have you. And if you want a sandbox feature with Dell, it's actually a separate product that has to be licensed and paid for and installed and maintained. So, that I can't say I'm a competitive expert, but that I know every product out there, but I am not familiar with the other competitors of ours that have this as again, a built-in integrated offering.
Yeah, I wasn't really aware of others, in the data labs space, right? That type of space. So.
All right, so we are right at time. So I want to thank you all very much for your time today. Again, the Veeam.com and the purestorage.com websites are, there's a wealth of information on both of those. So thank you all, and good luck with your Veeam and Pure journey.
Yes, thank you all. And we'll try to get to some of these. A couple questions came in right at the end here. We'll try to track those down and get you answers.
Great. Look forward to it, Chris.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mark.
All right.